G'day listeners and welcome to another Scouting Australia podcast powered by Australian Podcast Buyers Agency. I'm your host, Sammy Gordon, and today, guys, I'm very excited. This is the first episode to kick off 2025. We're all strapping in for a massive year in the property market, massive year at APS, and a massive year to help scale your portfolios. For all of you that were at the boot camp and the summit last year, you know that we are seriously committed to helping you guys scale into the biggest, baddest, best portfolios you've ever wanted to build, and this is the year to go out there and do it. There's so much we're going to be unpacking in this year's worth of episodes of the Scouting Australia podcast, and to kick it off, I'd like to welcome my good friend from the south, the deep south, we would say, and the deepest, darkest corner of Australia, Mr. Jimmy Ibrahim.
I don't know if it's the darkest. Welcome. It is probably the darkest, maybe the deepest. But g'day, listeners. Great to be here, Sammy. I am super excited. It's going to be a big year. To think not only from the content that we're going to produce this year and the value we're going to give to all of our listeners, but just to see people shine in their portfolios, to see you continue to kick ass. I'm excited about what's possible, and hopefully today we can inspire people, not just inspire them to motivate them, but actually give them some practical things so they can apply it, because you can get motivated, that's one thing, but if you actually do something and execute, that's when you get real results, and that's what today's all about.
100%, man. It's all about action taking. It's all about you can learn and you can get educated on the rest of this thing, and the application, actual action taking is what is always going to move the needle in the biggest way, man. So I'm super excited to dive into, for one, today's episode, but for two, man, like what we're talking about is how to make 2025 your best year yet. You know what I mean? Like these are the action steps to take, even just to like look at your portfolio again, have a good look at everything. You should have already been doing some planning over the break, but having a good look at your portfolio and really what you can do this year in property. Now, if you're working with APS and if you've done School of Property and you're strategizing with the boys and with the team or with myself or whoever it is, obviously we're going to be mapping out how we're going to move you forward in the biggest way possible this year. But man, I honestly believe like we've had some massive years, and probably even to kick this off, right? Like there's been some massive years the last few years in property, right? Like 2020, 21, 2, 3, 4, mate, they were great years for both of us and our portfolios and what we've gone out there to build. But man, I just see there's still so much opportunity in 2025. There's early markets rearing their heads. There's runners that are still going to produce some massive results this year as well. And man, I'm just super, super excited. One, to dig in today, but also, mate, even just like what I think this year is going to hold for so many people and our own portfolios as well. Man, I'm excited. I'm honestly pumped for a massive year. There's people that kind of called the end of the market when COVID eased off, and then they said again in 23 it was going to die, and I think it was late 2023. You know, we went out there and we did the podcast. I think it was September 23, something like that. We did the Super Boom podcast. Man, I feel like we've gone through the boom phase. We haven't even got to the Super Boom phase of where we probably, you know, we're going from that trajectory as well. So, dude, I'm just super excited to dig in, hook in, set a bit of an agenda for today, set an agenda for the year, plan out your portfolio, and man, have a massive 2025. So when we look back at the end of this year, man, everyone's socks are blown off by how much they achieved in 2025.
100%. I mean, we've got so much juicy stuff to get into. If I can just take a bit of a side note, I like the new casual vibe that we've got. If you're watching on YouTube here, folks.
There's some plants, man. Bit of oxygen.
I feel like Zach Galifianakis. You know, he did the
ferns. Between the ferns.
Between the two ferns.
You're the one in between the ferns. I'm on the outside. I'm chilling.
Between the two ferns.
Where's
if you're
your
on
baby?
YouTube, we're going a bit more of a relaxed vibe. A bit on the couch, on the casting couch, as you probably remember.
Yeah, man, I wouldn't have sat on that seat, but this one's nice and clean. But anyway, going from there.
So,
Matt, I think it's good to come back. Some people still be in holiday mode, so I think it's good to,
nice segue.
Little chilled.
All right.
Let's have a nice conversation with our friends over there at Scouting Australia and set the tempo for 2025.
Well, if I can set the agenda, just the first point. Is that all right? The first point, and I think this is really relevant, is be honest with where you are right now.
Ooh,
right?
Juicy.
Before you start getting stuck into anything, be honest. Do a bit of a pulse check. Realistically, look at where you're at. And either A, are you on the right trajectory, and do you need to stick to the basics? Do you need to execute? Do you need to do the things that have worked for you in the past and just continue to be consistent, continue to be disciplined, right? Because some people have already done that. They're on the right trajectory, and now it's a matter of maintaining the momentum, not getting lazy or comfortable, right?
And being derailed or having
derailed,
that,
all that. Or
sidetracked.
Or do you need to get a rocket up the backside, right? Have you been putting your head in the sand? And have you been saying to yourself, this year things will be different. And by the time you've listened to this, we're already, how long into? A couple of weeks into January. You said you were going to do certain things. Like, have you really looked at what you're doing? You're about to start work soon. Is that going to get behind the 8 ball? Are you going to make excuses and then February's going to come? Like, I just want people to start doing a pulse check internally. Where am I at right now? Right? Because that self-awareness piece is critically important so that you can set the framework to do things. I find people, and I've been there where my head was in the sand. It was too hard. I couldn't be bothered. I'll do it this time or that time. And, you're telling yourself a whole bunch of crap to make you feel good, but it's actually about starting to make some moves. So again, pulse check. Where are you?
Yeah, man, I love that because I think one of the biggest things, moving forward into a year, exactly that, man, taking stock of where you are right now. Now, like I said, man, like people should have been doing this, obviously earlier in the piece, man, over the break. This is when I set all my goals, everything, man. When things calm down, they quiet down.
Yeah.
I lock myself in the office. These days I go out to the farm, couple of days out there, man. I literally just map all this stuff out, man. Bit of peace, bit of serenity, and I go and map out what I want to do in the year ahead, right? So for me, that was obviously 2025, and man, breaking them down into tangible and bite-sized goals, I think, is really important. Taking really clear stock of where you are right now is super important because when you can take that clear stock of where you are right now, whether you haven't started at all or whether you have a property in or 10 properties in or 20 properties in, I think like taking stock of where you are right now, seeing available equity positions, seeing borrowing capacity perspectives, levers I can pull in the portfolio, what do I need next, all these sorts of things. It starts to set that really clear plan, path, and agenda forward for what you can be doing in your portfolio. Now, obviously, a lot of planning should be coming through from a strategy perspective as well. If you're working with APS, have these planning sessions with your strategists. They're going to be able to help you take stock, but lay everything on the table. Lay your goals on the table, combined with everything you've got available. What can we do? How hard can we push the envelope? I know when I had the calls towards the back end of the year, man, the last 2 weeks of the year, I had 10 calls with the new mentoring clients that came through. I had 5 calls left over from that I had from mentor clients from earlier in the year that were due their final one for the year. And man, when we kind of came into the back end of the year, it was mad. I was so amped. Every single one of them was like, I want to set a game plan now for what we can achieve in 2025. And I want to get my head in the game about it going into the break and really go into it from that side. Now, the cool thing is if you're listening to this on, I think it's the 13th of Jan or 14th of Jan or whatever it is when this is being released, if you're listening to this at this time and you're even within that week, most people haven't even fully come back to work yet. Brokers, accountants, even APS strategists, actually they would have been back this would be their second week back now and stuff as well. But what I'd say is like, have a good look at like checking in with those people now. What can we do to book something in? Let's plan and let's map the year. As you said, we're already a couple of weeks in. Let's map this thing in as soon as we can to set the tempo for what we're going to achieve. And shoot big, guys. Like if you've got big goals, just remember as much as you can accumulate, and some people need to go a little bit slower in the process, and that's fine. But shoot big. What is it that you want to go out there and achieve? How much do you want to create? How hard do you want to go after this thing? Let's set some real good, solid, tangible goals. If you want to do 2 in a year, shoot for 3. And then if you fall a little bit short, you hit the 2. If you hit the 3, beautiful. But this is where you need to like start thinking a little bit beyond it so that you have to do the work that'll get you at least there or even beyond what those goals are that you're chasing as well.
Yeah, I love that. And the interesting thing, when you were talking about your mentor clients, right? I think when people are doing an audit on themselves, they need to identify, well, what can I change and improve, right? And generally there's 2 main things. It's either getting better educated or getting the expertise from someone else. So if you do an audit of your own position and you're thinking, well, I don't know enough, well, how can I educate myself? Is it School of Property? Is it getting, listening to more of the podcast? Like, what can you do? Is it the expertise? Do you need to engage someone who's going to execute for you? Doing an audit of your day, of your week, of your month, and thinking, well, you know what? Realistically, I don't have the time to do it because I've got 3 young kids. I've got a busy job. I'm not going to be able to execute. So do I need an expert?
Yeah.
So that's a tangible step. Education or expertise, and how can you change each of those to actually improve your position?
Yeah, I like it, man. I like it. Dude, I know you've got a couple of ways you want to take this conversation as well, but what I want to dive into, man, really is assessing where you're at all different levels, okay? So the first thing, obviously, we typically go through 3 different levels of investor. We've got beginner, intermediate, advanced. I think the biggest thing from a beginner level investor, now that's either maybe someone who's just starting out, maybe they've just bought their first property, potentially their second, or maybe they haven't even bought anything yet, right? So they're very early in their journey. And I think like what people should be doing from the very outset of a new year coming in is having a good look at from a sacrifice perspective, what can I sacrifice or what is able to be sacrificed over the next 12 months to give me a bigger leapfrog forward? Because remember, the sooner we can start to accumulate properly and accumulate aggressively, the sooner that will compound. The more that you hold off on this stuff, the more that you hold off on the sacrifice, the more that you hold off on the second job, or you hold off on the savings plan, or you hold off on, getting rid of that car, buying a piece of shit so that you get the deposit back so you can buy these sorts of things. The longer you hold off on those things, the more that the losses compound as well. That extended time away from the market compounds, and it gets further and further away from you. The sooner you bring those things in, the quicker it starts to grow and the quicker it starts to compound. A lot of people look at my journey and, all right, 100 plus property portfolio at 34, right? And they look at it and they're like, oh, wow, like it's huge and all the rest of stuff. And it's like, those first 7 years were a slog, man. I was putting everything I could in. I was working my ass off, working multiple jobs, renovating every property, hustling, scraping, getting this little bit of deposit out of here, this bit of equity out of here, doing everything I could to really push the needle and push it in a big way. Now, yes, 100 property portfolio is beyond what most people ever want to do, but I've also been doing it for a very long time as well. But if you apply that to where you are right now and that dogged mentality I built for myself for that first 7 years. And for most people, it doesn't need to be for the first 7 years, especially if you're working with APS. Man, we're going to put you in the right deal. We're going to buy the right property in the right location at the right price that'll do the heavy lifting for you. These are the pieces that I didn't fully understand when I started my journey. So when you apply those things, those sacrifice pieces early, and then we can help you with that actual accumulation, the execution piece, a lot of the heavy lifting is going to be done for you. But if you can look at it this year or being like, okay, I don't have anything, or I've got the one property, but that might give me enough, hopefully enough equity for another deal. But what if I need to chip in another 10, 20 grand at the 6 month point to get into the second deal? What do I need to do now to create the extra $10,000, $20,000? Am I saving this? Am I saving that? Am I working that second job? Or do I need to get a bar job or something like that? Am I doing scaff on the weekend like Sammy used to do when he was in his teens? All this sort of stuff. Do I need that $50,000 car that I bought? We go back to Bailey's story. If you're and Kyle as well, like you're scraping and you're scrambling and you're trying to put things together, is there an actual simple solution that'll get you in the door of your first property, but that just means you have to eat shit for a little bit? You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think having a really, really blunt assessment of where you're at right now and what you could do, maybe ask yourself, what would Sammy do? What would Jimmy do in this situation to move forward? If I was speaking to them right now and these were the options on the table, these were the things. Maybe you don't have a car to sell. Okay. How much time do you have left on the weekends, after work, all those sorts of things? Could you do a second job for the next 6 months to save that first deposit? Get that together. All these different things.
Could you get a new job, Sammy? Could you? Have you been too lazy to get your resume together? Have you been too lazy?
Could you ask for a rise? Have you been too scared to ask for that thing?
That's right.
Just remember, you don't ask. You don't get.
Mate, your owner or the business owner or your manager is not going to give you a pay rise unless you ask for it. I think back to every job that I've had, other than when I worked at Safeway or Woolworths as a trolley boy when I was in year 10. But every single job from the age of 20 that I ever had, no one was going to give it to me. They didn't give it to me. I pushed and kept hassling them until they gave me the chance. And that was from 20 to 30.
99% of employers will not bring you a pay rise.
Let alone are they going to give you a pay rise?
Yeah, 100%.
No one.
Yeah.
So if you don't ask, you're not going to get it.
You'll not ask, you'll not get.
That's right.
It's as simple as that, as your mama says to me.
That's right. And, going back to something you said, and when people are thinking, it's easy for Sammy, he's done this and that. But let's not forget, Sammy.
Hold on. Easy for Sammy.
No. Let's not forget. Your first property you bought when you were 19, you took 3 years to save 30 grand. Mm-hmm. How many years between property 1 and property 2?
It was 3 years.
Another 3 years.
It was another 3 years. So it was the end of 2022 that I bought the second, which was the block of dirt.
But that's my point. So when people are thinking about that.
Yeah, 100%.
From property 1 that Sammy did, 3 years to get to property number 2.
Yeah. Man, I was making almost minimum wage, you know what I mean?
But that's my point.
Yeah, 100%.
When you think about 15 years, people are quick to think, it's 15 years, he's done this. But the first year to the third year, 1 property to 2, and people have the option of doing that quite comfortably by starting in the right fashion. So there is no excuses.
Man, 100%. Look what Bales did in 12-month window.
Agreed.
What took me six years at that point in time to do.
Yeah.
Look at what he did in a 12-month window, and what so many other people have done in that same sort of time frame as well. So that is why I'm hammering on the fact of if you need to sacrifice for a bit, if you need to sell something, if you need to eat shit, if you need to work this second job, if you need to slave for the next 6 months to get that together and buy that first deal, I promise you, nothing will be more rewarding than when you buy that first thing, because you earned it.
Yeah.
And no one can ever take that away from you. No one can ever belittle you and make you feel shit about it. So when people try to call me out at that boat party at the end of last year and like the articles and all the rest of the bullshit, it's like, man, I'm bulletproof. Fucking throw everything you've got at me, man. You can't hurt me. Are you kidding me? Like the amount of work I had to put in to achieve that, no one can take that away from you. And I guarantee you there will never be a more satisfying result you will ever get than when you've got the ability to do it.
And I know a lot of the people listening to this have the right mentality and so forth. And we're not telling you, you know, we're not dictating to you what you should do and there's only one way to do it. We're just trying to give you some advice. And the car thing is a real interesting thing for me because as you know, the car that I own today is, I don't even know if I could sell it for 30 grand. But I get on these phone calls with so many people and they've got huge car loans and they don't even own a property. They might have one or two. And my first question is, well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, do you really need that? There's a difference between being wealthy or creating wealth than pretending to create wealth.
Yeah.
So do the audit. This is part of your audit. Ask yourself the question, am I trying to pretend to be something, no matter what level you are, or am I actually there?
Yeah.
Because you can pretend to everyone else, but when you look at yourself in the mirror, you can't lie to yourself. And the numbers don't lie. So you can bullshit your mates, you can rock around at being a baller and all that and pretend and take photos of some beach and no one gives a shit. But the numbers will tell you whether or not you're doing it. Yeah. That is part of your audit.
But I think the crazy thing as well, right, when I did these mentoring calls with clients at the end of the year, it's funny, at the start of the year, I had two people that did it. I had Toby Johnson, and then about 3 months later, I had Peter Contos. They sold their primary residence so they could go harder, right? So out of the first 11...
And Peter sold his car, didn't he? Did his car
sold
like
everything.
80 grand,
he had that Beamer that was his dream car. He sold that as well. Man, like, these guys willing to push the envelope and do anything they need to do. The crazy thing is, though, in that last batch of mentoring clients that I had as well, man, I had clients that, like, they'd spent the last 5 years building their dream home and all the rest of it, and they're like... But it was holding them back. It was an anchor in their portfolio. And it wasn't their dream home. They just built this beautiful home. Ultimately, they said to me, I had multiple people say to me, this isn't actually my dream home. I go, well, for me, it's an easy decision. It's an anchor because of the size of the debt on it. It's an anchor because of the size of the capital that's left in it. And man, more than half of the mentoring clients, that batch of 10, more than half of them clip their primary residences or making the decision to clip their primary residences. Some of them literally have, there's one couple in there that's got a, I won't say exactly how much, but it's an over $5 million home on the canals in the Gold Coast, and ultimately what they want long-term is a beachfront house probably worth twice as much, and they've got multiple millions of dollars worth of debt tied up in it, multi-million dollars worth of equity tied up in it, and they're even though they're on big incomes, they're kind of struggling. Like they're struggling to be able to push hard with the game, and man, we had that very blunt conversation, and I said, you got to run these numbers and see how they come back and how they're going to look if you make this decision. And they ran all the numbers and came back to me and go, it's a no-brainer, like to go through and to do this thing. And it was a beautiful house, man, you know what I mean? And like they spent a lot of money obviously acquiring it, renovating it to how they like it, all the rest of the sort of thing. But at the end of the day, they have a limited time frame. It's not exactly what they want as a dream primary residence. And they know that selling is going to seriously move the needle. And that all came from a strategy session of mapping out what are your goals? What are the time frame you want to achieve it in? And like we factored everything into the equation.
Yeah.
And it becomes an easy decision. So this is where making that audit, and even around properties in the portfolio, and if we move on to the next sort of phase of investors being intermediate, but even that could still be beginner, it could be intermediate, it could be advanced. It's still got that scenario around the primary residence there as well, where that could be the anchor that's holding them back to unlocking everything within their portfolio. If you understand how to build it, all the school property members and obviously APS clients will understand how we work things from a creative lending perspective to keep moving forward and not get stuck. But a lot of time, unleashing that amount of debt, unleashing that amount of capital, it is literally it's like you're trying to sprint and someone's holding you from behind and then bang, they let go of you. That's literally the difference between, a lot of the time between holding that primary residence, especially if it's not the dream primary residence. So I think this is where, man, people should be taking the audit across the board and then working that up against your goals. Okay, what are your goals? Where are you sitting? It starts to become very clear when you start looking at this thing as a business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You look at this thing as a business, what's going to make the biggest and best results for you.
It's interesting when you said that couple with the $5 million home. Most people in general population would think that those people have won already. Right? It's just interesting to think of that concept.
Yeah.
So most people would think they have succeeded. They got a $5 million place on the canal. why aren't they happy? They should be happy, right?
They are happy. But just because they're happy doesn't mean that they're at the point that they can retire. They're in very high stress, high paying jobs, and they can't stay in those things forever. Like, and that's the thing. That's what they said to me. They need to, without going too deep around their personal situation. They still have a lot of debt left on their primary residence, and they haven't built out a passive income.
That's right.
So, like, okay, sweet. Like, and I understand. Obviously, it's a significant home, beautiful home, all the rest of it, significant incomes, all the rest of it. But then at the end of the day, man, if it's not your end goal, even though the $5 million home might be someone else's end goal, we did this at the summit.
Yep.
Most people's dream house is probably circa that $5 million, right? Their dream home is the next level. It is that next level up. Because they've also earned the right because of how hard they've worked, the positions they've got themselves into, and the level that they're now at. They're on a different level.
Yeah.
So it means that their goals are different to everyone else's. In reality, their goals are pretty much double everyone else's.
Yeah.
So they sometimes need to make these big needle-moving decisions like this to be able to move things forward. So,
well, that's why the angle I was getting at with the audit was their audit is purely around because they've got a better circle of influence around them. If they didn't have the conversation with you and realizing what they want to achieve, they wouldn't have the tools to be able to execute that. So when you're doing an audit, you're doing an audit of yourself internally, of where are you at? How am I tracking? What do I need to do? But I think it's really important to start doing an audit, or you should have already done it, or you should be doing it ongoingly. But now is better than ever, around where are you getting your information? Where are you getting your advice? What is your circle of influence telling you? Because some of those people, the $5 million, their friends will be like, dude, you've won. What are you doing? But because they're surrounded by someone like you and they're having a different conversation, their circle of influence is they're thinking on a different level. So start doing that audit as well. Am I listening to the news? Am I listening to the podcast? Who's telling me the advice? Both internally and externally. I think that is critical. You know, I always talk about your circle of influence, but that is one of the most important things that will change and move the dial in your life. When you start changing the advice you're getting and only listening, listen to everyone, but listening to the people who've done it.
Man, that's a great segue into kind of what I was thinking, even for next up for the intermediate level as well. Because like, how many people are banging their heads against the wall, getting the same results year after year, right? Then maybe they want to go for every year they're setting the goals for 3 or 4 properties a year, or maybe they're doing 1, or maybe they're doing 2 or something like that, which isn't anything to sneeze about.
Yep.
But if you've been doing this for a while and you want to do 3 or 4 a year, and you've been investing for the last 3, 4, 5, 10 years, something like that. If you want to do 3, 4 a year, if you've invested properly and you set the correct game plan, you should be able to do 3 or 4 a year, right? So I think, man, like having a really good reset across the table and having a look and like, again, thinking outside the norm, right? Like I'm probably the only property investment advisor and expert in the country that constantly bangs on about selling a property once it's done its job. Yeah. You when a player is ready to retire or he's retiring, his body's broken, you put him out to pasture. You let him chill. You let him go enjoy the rest of his life. You don't keep him in the portfolio, keep him on the bench when he's costing you money every year and not giving you a result, not giving you anything, in your portfolio. And I think treating your portfolio like a business or treating your portfolio like a sporting team and working it like that, man, the results you will get in your portfolio, there's a reason why you're not getting the results you want, right? And then whether you're an intermediate, you're a beginner, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, it doesn't matter which level you're at.
Yeah.
If you're not getting the results that you think you should be getting every year, are you doing the same things every year? Are you changing the advice? Are you taking the advice of someone who may be giving you something different? Or are you just doing the same thing again and again? Are you trying to do this yourself and then listening to the podcast and going, hang on a second, how are kids getting 3 properties in a year from one deposit or 2 properties in a year from one deposit, building 5 property portfolios by 24, 25, and I'm 35, I'm 40, I'm 50, I'm making X amount, and I can only get 1 or 2 away a year? Is there something they're doing differently to you? The answer is yes. And if you're doing the same thing over and over again the same way, or maybe you're getting too much in your own way or whatever it is from this perspective, something has to give, something has to change. Treating your portfolio like a business, taking the correct advice, building the portfolio in the correct way, acquiring the right properties, clipping when required, it is going to open up and it will completely change the trajectory of your journey. So I kind of wanted to tie them in. It's obviously with like all of them, and obviously I'm segmenting it into one of the other sort of style of levels of investor, but ultimately, man, like,
well, it's just tweaked, right? If you're an advanced investor, what would you say advanced? 10 plus? 10 plus. You're just tweaking the advice you're getting. You're tweaking your strategy slightly. It's a bit more high level, a bit more creative. So it's just a different stage. You're just at a different level than when you're starting out, right? You're still facing challenges. You're still going to have to overcome the same shitty things and the discomfort and the uncertainty and all that sort of stuff. It's just another level. So your circle and all the things we're talking about relates whether you're starting out, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. It's just slightly tweaked accordingly.
Of course, man, of course. And I think it's the thing, like, as you go through, you should really be leveling up. You know what I mean? And, like, I think the key thing, and, like, where I see so many of my guys, especially clients, and I know Lukey's the same, Nay and Paulie with their boys as well, their boys and girls as well, is, like, when you surround yourself with that right team, and then we're putting the right deals in the portfolio, and we're getting in the right locations, right property, right price, right team that allows us from a creative lending perspective to keep moving forward, putting it with the right lenders, you know, relevant to where you are in your journey. All these pieces start to marry up for you to start leveling up in your game as well. So, man, that's what I absolutely love about what it is that we do, because we help people navigate that piece that so many people just don't have that experience. And it doesn't matter where they are, because, like, even if you're a 10 property investor, sweet, you've done really well. Do you know how to get to 20? You realistically probably don't, because you haven't been through it. So you need the advisor. You need someone that's been there and done that to help navigate that next level for you. Maybe you do know how to do it, especially if you've gone through the last couple of years and you've acquired hard and you figured out how to do it, or we've helped you do it, or whatever as well from that perspective. But so often you need that person that's a level in front of you to help you get to that level, show you how to do it, give you the roadmap, give you the right team, the understanding, everything as well. So, yeah, man, I think that ties in so neatly with everything we're talking about here. Take stock, make a strategy, have the right team. The right team should help you make the strategy, and then implement, man.
Can I, just turning it to just my own personal story, when I was, thinking about buying 10 properties when I was a kid just seems so foreign, right? And when started the journey with you, even buying the first few deals, it just was, none of my circle was doing that. And after I bought a few properties, you sort of start to get confidence, but the double figures just seemed like a really big milestone. And being completely honest, once I hit the 10 properties, subconsciously, I just sort of took the foot off the gas and just sort of, not that you'd made it, because I sort of knew that I had to do more, but I think it was just a bit of a breather. You're sort of working so hard to get to a certain level. And then this is going to tie into the circle, because I remember having the conversation with you, and after I bought the 10th property, and things get in the way, and changing brokers and doing this, and just life gets in the way. And I remember it was like 8 to 10 months down the line, and you're like, what are you doing? And we had a real honest chat, and you're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I thought you said you wanted to do this, that. And I won't go into the full details of our conversation, but basically you squared me up, put a rocket up me and said, mate, if you are serious about this and you're wanting to build out the portfolio, you can't be doing this. You have to be consistent. You have to be executing constantly. Why aren't you doing this? Pull your head out of your ass and do it. And then I was like, dude, you're right. Yeah, you're right. And it was only after that conversation that we went on a real big push. And then in the last 12 months, it's been obviously a very different game for me and my portfolio. And I bought more property in the last 12 months than I have ever. But that's only because I had the influence of you. So what I want people listening to this is that at any stage that you're at, if you're working with people that are better than you or further down the line than you, they will drag you and pull you out. And you can't underestimate that, because you're hanging around your mates and they're not doing anything, and you've got 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever it is that you want, but you want more, they're not going to do it for you. Go out and find the people that can.
100%, man. Mate, I love you sharing that story with me as well. And I remember a couple of the things that were kind of like, especially when you hit a bit of a slow point. And man, we launched I remember when we had the big chat, because like we launched the release for the upcoming summit and boot camp. And when one of those big things was like, we were 3 to 4 months out from the summit. And I said to you, man, like you said, there was a certain amount you were going to hit in this time frame. I'm going to fucking rip you on stage if you haven't done anything more than what we spoke about, because we talk about it all the time. And I was just being dead honest with you of the fact, like, I'll call you out and I'll effectively make you an example of what not to do when you have the ability to do it. And man, to hold you accountable as well. I remember you saying, but like the broker and there's this and there's that. And I'm like, call the broker every fucking day and tell them if they can't get you this pre-approval or get this thing in time, it's all good. Let me know. I'll go somewhere else and find it. Because sometimes, even when they're my referrals, or like they're our referrals, at the end of the day, sometimes they need to rocket up the ass as well to go, look, I know you've been stuffing around this thing, you've been trying to make it work. I need this thing sorted now so I can move on to the next level and I can keep moving forward. And I remember there was a couple of months there for a row where you kind of said to me, you use that as an excuse. And I didn't pick it up at first. And then it happened again. I was like, hang on, man, you said that to me last time. Like, how much are you following us up? And, oh, yeah, I'm following up. And then you said it to me again. And I was like, boom. And then that's when it was. And it was around that same time we'd launched for some. And I was like, dude, like, mate, you can't keep using that same excuse to me. You know what I mean? And like, all I'm doing, man, is really just throwing that extra layer on the story because, like, feeding on of your example of an accountability partner with that end, I'll always be your accountability partner, and you'll always be mine as well. Like, there's different things in my life and different things that I do that you give me a bit of a temp check on sometimes, and you question me sometimes about different things and push me sometimes with different things that maybe I'm hesitating about, or I don't have anyone else in my circle that sometimes agrees with me about certain shit, and I ask you about it, and you give me your opinion on it. Man, like, I feel like you need people that are on either the same level as you or above, depending on the level you're at, right? But you need people that are pulling you towards those different levels, always challenging you, pushing you, calling bullshit on stuff. And I love you like a brother, man. When I call bullshit on stuff, it's for your own benefit. I don't care if you buy, the average person on the street, I don't care if they don't buy 4 or 5 deals in a year or whatever it is. But for you, I know what your goals are. And I'm like, mate, you're almost at retirement age. You need these in the you need these in the portfolio. You're right. You told me this was your goal. Bang. So like, even from that perspective, having that accountability partner, and that's why, like, when we say about like sending these podcasts on, I don't say it from a personal or a growth perspective of Scouting Australia podcast. I know the power of having someone on your team and having someone on your side and alongside someone else, because if you're anything like us, you'll get competitive and you want to outperform them, and if they're anything like you, they'll grow alongside you and want to outperform you as well, and all of a sudden you're competing with other people and wanting to beat them, and it's in a friendly, competitive way. And when you think about it, if you're trying to beat other people in investing that you're close with, you're all going to get great results. So yeah, man, I love it, and I think it's like such a super prudent thing to think about and to talk about at the very start of the year. How many people set goals at the start of last year, at the start of 2024 or the end of 2023 and didn't hit them in 2024? You know what I mean? Like, you need to set the goals, you need to get the game plan, you have the accountability partner, whether that's someone at APS or it's someone that you know, or maybe even better if it's both. And then you're moving towards these results and really trying to move the needle to change your outcome this year and to get that result you really want to get. And maybe you got your result last year. But if you got your result last year, did you maybe shoot too low, or was it a great goal? And if it was, give yourself a pat in the back and, okay, sweet, how do we double down and go even bigger this year and achieve something significant this year as well?
When I'm thinking about that last period of time of buying these properties and after that chat and what happened, it's sort of, and I'm curious on what your thoughts on this are, and I'm wondering if this is going to be relevant for people. But when I think about what is the most important attribute of accumulating and getting into deals, and just stick with me for this.
Is this a question?
No, I'm just going to share what I think it is for me, right? And what's moved the needle for me and what I'll continue to do. And the caveat is, obviously, I engage Australian Property Scout, full transparency, so I'm not sourcing the deal on my own. So what moves the needle for me to get more deals and to continue to accumulate is one thing, and one thing simply, is to get the pre-approvals. If I can get pre-approvals done, I'm off the hook. Yeah. Because I get them, I send them into the team, and I wait for a deal and then get to decide yes or no. So it's not about me finding the properties or accumulating.
You don't get to decide yes or no.
I don't know.
You get a text and you say, here's a deal coming.
Yeah. But so it's the pre-approval. And so if people start thinking about, well, if they're going to use a buzzer, if they're doing it on their own, then there's obviously a lot of things to do. Yeah. But if you want to do something that's tangible, focus on everything you need to do about getting your pre-approval done. That is the hardest thing, because getting all your paperwork, and that is what's going to move the needle for you. I don't know what your thoughts are, maybe when you're starting out, but
yeah, man, I was always like, I was always accessing equity, revaluing properties, trying to pull a lever here, pull a lever there, going off renovating deals, all these sorts of things. Man, I was always very active with that, from that perspective, from a lending front. And I think for me, man, like I needed to always be revaluing, right? So I would always figure out, okay, so the banking policy of the bank that I have this property with, and I learned this very early, and it was something I picked up from all my reading, was around. I had heard someone else doing the same thing, and then I realized I could do it. And so with one particular bank that I was with, I could val every 45 days, and I hadn't bought in the right growth location in reality at that time, very early in my journey, so I wasn't getting that growth, but I was still doing it every 45 days. And all of a sudden I actually remember clearly when I bought the unit, because I've been saving my ass off, and I'd saved myself about 20 grand. And when I bought the unit, it took me ages to finally get a val up, even though I'd done a bit of work to it. The market was just dead. I wasn't getting good vals. And then I finally got a $13,000 uplift. And I'd already been looking because, $13,000 equity release, which is nothing, right, in the scheme of things. But I'd already saved my 20 grand deposit, but I didn't have enough to be able to go and buy the block of dirt and then build on it because that's what I was looking for at the time. But when I got that 13 grand equity release, that was enough to buy the block. And then the build was about 20 grand. So I had enough to do my 10% deposit on the block and then my 10% deposit on the build, which is about 200 grand. So I had enough to do it. And then I just kept saving as I went through. And then I built that over the next year. And then over the following year after that, I had all the extra, money I had coming in from all my little scaffolding. I was playing semi-pro soccer. I was getting paid from that. I had my bartending. All the money as that would come in each month, I would then do the next little phase of landscaping and then the next little phase of landscaping. And that was my way up. And then Sydney finally started to move. And I started, again, that policy of like equity releasing. It finally started to pay me big dividends. I started being able to take decent chunks out of deals because both Wollongong and Moss Vale, the property I had down south, they both started performing really well. So, man, I think it's like, what is it that you need to do? And for me, it was that. And for you, it might be like, depending where you live, it might be, okay, can I renovate something that I'll get the equity release and go? Like, but what are the little things that you can do in your journey that are specific and relevant to you? They're going to move the needle because we can all blame everyone else. But at the end of the day, and even if I go to a point where I was lazy in my portfolio, after I did the build, it was actually funny. It's just come back to me then. Man, I just presumed the income I was on, because I was on such low income, I just presumed I wouldn't be able to get any more debt. So I didn't even go and ask them. I was happy just with the 2 deals. Then started to grow. And then, man, I probably could have got back into the market like a year sooner, but I didn't do it. And then I finally go, you know what? I got one pay bump, and I went and asked. And they go, oh yeah, you got like $1 million worth of borrowing, and you can equity release like 200 grand. I was like, holy shit, I've just missed like a year of the market in that time frame. So being active with it and having accountability, and obviously listening to this and working with strategists and stuff, they're gonna be able to move it faster. But yeah, man, I just feel like there's so much potential that people leave on the table of just not taking the action they should take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was for you, that was getting the pre-approvals. For me, that was probably, I did different things as I could, but then I got stuck and I took too long to get that next val, just presuming I couldn't do it. And it's, how do we push the needle? How do we push the envelope? And man, I was also going back, I was 22, 23, 24, something like that. Like I hadn't been taught this stuff before either. So again, listening to this, or maybe you're the next generation up. Maybe you've got kids that are the same age and you want to send this podcast and give them this lesson of what they could be looking at, thinking about, all this sort of stuff. Set goals for this year.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to properly set goals until I was like in my late 20s. You know what I mean? Until I really started figuring this thing out properly and how much of a needle mover it has when you set real, tangible, line in the sand goals. That's what starts to move the needle and change things. Because you get to the end of the year, or you're reading it every single day when you're looking at it, you're like, holy shit, I'm halfway through the year and I'm no, I haven't ticked any of these off yet. I better get a move on. Hold you accountable. Hold yourself accountable. Get someone else to hold you accountable, hold them accountable to theirs as well, move the needle.
Yeah. And I mean, you were talking about an example of kids starting out, but even on the other spectrum, whether you're in your 40s, 50s, or even 60s, and it's interesting the dialogue that people might be having internally about, well, this is a young person's game. What can't I do, and so forth. So we're talking about a pressure test and a temp check of everywhere. Doesn't matter how old you are, because there is something you can do.
Bro, those two clients I spoke about earlier, there's two separate clients. The one with the PPR over 5 mil and the other one with the other PPR that they'd love, they'd spent all the money on it. Made both of those couples are in their 50s.
Great.
And man, they're moving the needle.
Great.
They're setting goals. By the end of this year, when I do their poddies, end of this year, start of next year, it's going to blow your mind what people in their 50s are able to do when they set their minds to it. I actually just sent them a deal before, actually, one of those couples as well.
Yeah?
We got a deal done.
Awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Beautiful. When they set their minds to it and they go hard after something, there is so much as possible.
Yeah.
I wish my parents had someone like me back when I was starting out, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't have gone through the learnings I've gone through if they had someone. So now I can obviously help them with it, but whatever generation you're at, or if you've got, the generation older than your parents above you, or maybe you're the parents and you've got the kids below you, you've got this unique time, this unique opportunity. And in my mind, honestly, this unique product and listening platform that literally is us, that we're going to change the needle, man. We're going to move the needle of actually retiring people during this time frame and giving this tangible, advice and tangible application of shit that you can put into your own portfolio, man, and get results that will literally change your generational wealth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, no longer are people going to be retiring on just a PPOR and then the pension bloody life support until they die. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
going to be creating real results for people to live literally on their terms, financial freedom, and not just talking about it, actually getting them there, road mapping it, acquiring the properties, giving the education, execution, knocking it out and achieving it, man.
Yeah, I love it.
That is what we are literally on the mission to do, any and all generations, man. And this is what juices us up.
You know what I think is going to be a massive thing this year? People in their SMSF and their super, no matter what age, even having conversations with people in their 20s and 30s, getting super pumped about it. I think this year is going to be the big needle mover for people to realize what can be done in super and taking control of their financial future. I love that. Man. It's going to be super exciting.
I agree with you, bro. I agree with you. Man, I think the only thing to probably like round out with this as well, from my perspective, is even if we move on to, I say moving on to the advanced, but I think it goes for anyone at any stage in their portfolio. I know I kind of said before around like sell downs if required as well, but consolidating and looking to add in cash flow, which is probably more of the advanced, moving into the advanced, latter intermediate and into the advanced, consolidation on a few growth properties and whatnot, moving into the cash flow. Make sure we start building that in ahead of time, getting high quality cash flow deals. We're talking about a few deals that I'm going to source for you in the next couple of months as well, just before this podcast too. Like, man, adding that sort of stuff into the portfolio, getting those results, building in the cash flow. I mean, these are the net income streams for the longer term they're going to have in their portfolio for life. Start placing some of those into the portfolio too. And man, we're super excited to be obviously offering, the new service, which is commercial. Still do a little bit of the resi cash flow, but obviously the real opportunity right now, we believe, is in the commercial market with yield compression in resi. Man, I think there's so much ability and opportunity around this right now that we're obviously helping a lot of people with. And again, man, helping people consolidate out of super high growth assets that have now got a low yield because of how much growth they've had. They got, we want to clear that low yielding debt, transition that cash if they're at the right point in their portfolio, transitioning that into strong positive cash flow assets, and yeah, man, really set the portfolio up moving forward.
And also for people who have a large portfolio, they're dealing with more issues and problems naturally just because they've got a bigger portfolio. So for people that are starting out or intermediate, don't think that the advanced people have it easy. If anything, they're taking on more challenges because they're building a bigger portfolio. The only difference is their elasticity, their tolerance, and their capacity to take on more is just more stretched. It's like if you've been if you've been training for 30 years, your tolerance to be able to run longer or do weights, it's natural.
Yeah.
So everyone needs to start thinking about this journey as an elasticity. Do you have the capacity to withstand that elastic band snapping and just holding on? Let it stretch you because you can take on more. If you can take on more, then your muscle will develop. Those problems that seem big will no longer seem big because you're taking on bigger problems.
I think that feeds into so well, kind of like the things we're talking about before, different levels of investors. And like people looking at different people at different levels, but also a different level of accumulation. If you front end some hard end accumulation early and you have a really strong 6, 12, 24 months of accumulation, you're going to go through a lot of shit, you know what I mean? But mentally, it will make you very, very tough from that perspective as well. Just remember, if you're at 2 properties and someone's at 10, just remember the problems that you think you have now at 2 properties, they got 5x that, right? Someone's at 20 properties, they got 10x the problems that you have.
Yeah.
But they would have built the resilience because they also have bought, let's say, 10x the properties, which means on the way through, they had 10x the headaches on the way through, undoubtedly. Like, most of the time there's something going on with a deal or whatever. But exactly as Jimmy's saying, that mindset, that strength that comes of mind of doing these things again and again, it just becomes conditioning. And over the time, what you find is you become almost immune to it. You just get to that. And I said this at the summit, you start having that mindset of a solutions-based thinking.
Yep.
How do I solve this problem? I don't even look at things as like a worrying problem.
Yeah.
Right? I just look at it, okay, sweet, how do I fix it? Or like, what's the solution to this problem? And there's so many avenues. And you just look at the best cost versus return analysis on every single problem. Cost versus return analysis solution on every single problem. It's a business. Make a business decision. Don't get emotional just because it's a property. It's all good. create the solution, move on. It's as simple as that, man. I think the more people build that bulletproof mindset, embrace it. Every time something that comes along, man, embrace it. I'm building my mindset. Here we go. Beautiful. Mad. Throw this problem at me. Let me create a solution. And if you're stuck with a solution, guys, especially if you're working with APS, check with your strategist, check with your BA, check with your client success manager. If you need a hand with it, how to fix something, try and solve a problem. If you need a hand with it, reach out to the team. That's what we're here for as well. Fast, we're not a tick and flick, man. We're here to build your whole portfolios. We want to get you on the stage in 2030. We're going to do that from one deal, two deals. It's a process. It's a journey, and it's many, many years involved with this. There's something you need a hand with. Just reach out. Hey, I'm just having this problem, mate. Can you just give me a hand? And what you'll find is that over time, you will build that solutions-based thinking by either coming up with the solutions, being provided potentially by the property managers, or sometimes you might need to ask APS and get our opinion on these things as well to help you move through these pieces. So, man, I love it from this perspective. I think it's super powerful. I think the ability to level up is things that people should be excited about. I think people should be pushing the goals, pushing the limits, comfortably from a cash flow perspective and an equity perspective, not being silly from a cash flow or a buffer perspective. But man, what can you do without being silly that pushes the needle harder than anyone else really has ever pushed you before? And then let's go, man. Let's get after it. APS is a year, like 2025 is APS's year of the scale. We want to get people on the stage in 2030. Man, formative years like last year, this year, like 2024, 2025, 2026. These are going to be the formative years that either get you on the stage or they don't. And that choice is up to the individuals, up to the listener, it's up to the investor to make those decisions themselves. Because ultimately, man, I'm not going to go out and work an extra 2 jobs for the beginner trying to get into their first property. I've already done that. Yeah. That's up to them now to go out there and do. And save and eat shit and all these sorts of things, man. It's a compounding effect that the individual has to make the decision. And I promise you, I said this at the start of the episode, I promise you nothing will ever give you more satisfaction than putting in the work and getting the result. No one can ever take that from you. And we'll all celebrate as a team when you're on the stage in 2030.
And for people listening to this, some people listening to what you just said will be fired up and charged. And some of them are going to be thinking a bit overwhelmed and like, oh shit, am I going to have to go bananas and do all this? Just a reminder for people, this is all about consistency, right? We're not saying to go out there and go, balls out, going bananas
and it's all relevant to the individual.
It's relevant, but consistency will always outperform intensity because the consistent action, whether it's getting your documents, communicating with your brokers, your accountants, with your strategist, the consistency, when we think about 12 months is a long time, right? Be consistent. Don't do it for a month or two and then do nothing. Yeah. Be consistent every week, every month, because that mindset, that consistent approach, that's what's going to get you the results at the end of the year.
Man, to hammer home one final point off the back of that as well, because I love that, man. Like for me, as an absolute minimum, when I've always had strategies with clients, and even when I had them with younger clients, back obviously when I used to strategize with everyone, which I wish I still could do, but obviously I only have so many hours in the day, man, I would always say to people, the absolute minimum thing you want to do every single year, year in, year out, is do whatever you have to do to be able to buy 2 properties a year. Buy 2 properties a year. Now, if you're sitting at 20 grand right now, deposit, and you need 60, 70 grand, whatever to get into your first property, you might be thinking, holy fuck, how am I going to get into 2 properties this year? Now, maybe you can't. Maybe it is out of stretch. Maybe. But what do you have you could sell? How much is your car worth? And I'm dead serious about this. How important is this to you? How much is your car worth? How many hours you got left on the weekends? How many hours you got left after work during the week? You know what I mean? Like, man, at my height of going as hard as I could, I worked a full-time job during the day. I worked a full part-time role at every night, and I still did scaff and played soccer on the weekends. Man, I did that for like 3-4 years straight until I started to build up a bit of momentum in terms of buying properties. And instead of doing that, I'd go off and renovate deals, right? And man, I think like have a serious look at this, especially for those guys at the very start, but guys anywhere, even if you're setting your goals, no matter what your goals are, in terms of how small they are or what you're trying to chase, as an absolute minimum, you should be trying to do 2 deals a year. Because 2 deals a year for 5 years is a 10 property portfolio. If you front end growth properties within it, by the time we get to years 5, 6, 7, we're going to be selling down and consolidating the first deals that'll help pay off deals or fund cash flow deals at the back end. And you're going to move such a needle, it's not funny. 10 property portfolio in 5 years is honestly achievable for anyone starting with that first deposit. Now, if you've got to get to that first deposit, that's a different story. Obviously, it might take a little bit of time to get there. Figure out what is the fastest route to get there. Have I got to sprint and put myself into the ground for 6 months to do it, to get there? If that's what you have to do, that means by July or June or July, you can probably buy your first deal. We might be able to get the second deal by the end of the year. What have you got to do to make this happen? 2 deals a year, absolute minimum. That's what I want every Scouting Australia podcast listener to get.
I love that.
By the end of this year.
Yeah.
And ongoingly as well. Because if you do it, man, I promise you the needle moving that'll come off the back of it, because you'll get to year 3 and the equity gains you get in that time frame, you won't be doing 2 deals a year by year 3, year 4, year 5. I guarantee you it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
You got to push the needle. What do you got to do? We don't retire people in 20, 30 years. You want to do that? Go listen to another podcast. We're not for you. How can I retire you in 8 or 10 years, 7, 8, 10 years, regardless of your goal?
And when we say retire, just for people, just to not get confused, this is to live life on your own terms. It's not about to sit at home watching.
Income replacement, man.
Yeah, income
Not life
replacement
support.
to do whatever you want. So it's the choice, it's freedom, retirement, whatever. but
Everyone's goals are
financial
different.
freedom. Yeah,
Everyone's
100%.
goals are different.
Can I add one thing to?
But you give me that commitment, man, I'll give you that result.
Yeah, and something to build on that. I just wanted to the tick box analogy. I know
Okay.
I said this on my podcast a long time ago, but one of the best bits of advice I got was from, and I've told you this, but for the listeners again, I think it's quite relevant at the start of the year.
What did I say?
You loved it. No. So
No, I mean, what was the advice I gave you?
So the tick box analogy was a story basically from a guy that used to sell things door to door. I think he was selling, I don't know, whatever he was selling. And this Asian man owned the business. And every salesperson had to visit, I think it was about at least 100 doors a day, right?
Was it? Wonton and on.
Maybe it was. Maybe Wonton owned the business.
Maybe. It was Yao Chen, our friend.
Maybe.
I love Yao Chen.
But they had to.
Shout out Yao Chen.
They had to do 100 every single day, door knocks and document it.
Yes.
And when they came back to the actual factory, there was a form that they had to complete.
Yep.
And there was 2 boxes. One was yes and one was no. And the question was, did you meet the target for today? And the owner said, there is no line to write the story or why you did or the excuse or not. You had to tick yes or no. He wasn't interested in, did you, oh yeah, but my this and that. No. Yes or no. And I just thought, that is just such a great way to sum up and cut through all of the noise. If anyone's looking at this year, even if you want to put in your desk, put just 2 boxes, yes and no. Put it up on your computer, put it on your board or whatever, and just remind yourself at the end of the year, you want to tick one of those. Don't give the story. Don't have the excuse. Did you or didn't you?
Yep.
That is the ultimate scorecard. And then you want to be confident enough to give a big tick on the yes and know that you did it, right? So if that just gives people some context of cutting away all the noise, because at the end of the day, we want you to get your goals. We want to get our own goals and we want everyone to share in the success and do it. It's just, you need it almost like the accountability thing. Yes or no? Are you going to do it?
Yeah. No
maybes. So hopefully that gives someone a bit of practical stuff.
I love that, man. I love that. Honestly, dude, it's why I always love doing these. I love doing these, kind of more of a mindset sort of style session. It's a mix between a mindset and a motivation and bloody a practical approach for this year in terms of how people can start the year as well. But yeah, man, I love doing these with you because there is so much people can take out of it. And sometimes people need a bit of a shake up. You know what I mean? And I think the first ep of the year, man, putting it into perspective of what's possible, what people can get out there, what can they achieve, how to look at things properly as well, and set out that game plan, man. Set out that minimum. Push the envelope. What do you really want to achieve this year that is actually possible, but push the limits of what's possible, and then let's get after it, man. You know what I mean? Let's get after it. Let's change that financial future, man. Let's create something significant. If there's anyone in the world, literally, that pretty much had zero right to achieve financial freedom through property, it was me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Minimum wage, man, working on the farm, no uni degree, no trade, I didn't make it in sport, all these other things. Everything was against me from all those perspectives, man. It still happened. You know what I mean? It all comes down to the drive. As long as you have the drive, as long as you're the individual for a drive, I guarantee you apply yourself for 12 months towards what I'm telling you today and what we've been talking about, they're going to get a result, man. 100%.
Sammy, you know, I love the mindset stuff because if there's the biggest blockage that I think anyone to do anything successful in their own life, it is the 6 inches between their own head and their ears, because they're not actually doing it. You can learn everything and so forth, but if you have a strong mindset on this whole thing, that's what's going to cause you or push you to do things. So that's why we keep going on about the mindset thing. This is the make or break. Your body's conditioned to make you comfortable. No one wants to go to the gym in the morning. No one wants to go for a cold swim in the beach and no one wants to push themselves to work long hours. Like successful people hate the same things that unsuccessful people hate. They just do it anyway because they have that inner drive to want to do more, and they know that outside of their comfort zone, that's where the juice is. That's where the kwa is. You know, that's where you want to really get the essence of life, is pushing yourself. So if people are listening to this thinking, our mindset's all, it's a fugazi, they don't understand the exchange here, right? You are stopping yourself or you are enabling yourself to be successful. And if once you identify that, then you can take action. So we implore everyone, make this year the best year for you. Doesn't have to be what Sammy wants to do. Doesn't have to be what I want to do or your partner or your parents. But what you want to do, you can do it. There's nothing that's going to stopping you from doing one thing, just starting, moving forward. Or if it's kicking ass, keep going. But you can.
Yeah.
And why not? Why can't you do it? If someone else is doing it, why can't you? And that's what I think. Why can't I? Why not?
Bro, anyone listening to this podcast, they have the ability to do it. And if they apply themselves, they will get the result. And that's what I said. Anyone that does it, give me 12 months of actual dedication to it. We'll show you what's possible. And the rest of the life, man, like the rest of your life will make a lot of sense as we build this thing out.
Yeah, I love it.
Because this is what's crazy, man. And I felt lost quite a few times when I was younger in my life. And it's funny, until this all started to really build out and take proper shape and fruition, man. Dude, I didn't really know where my path was going to lead. It's funny because I always knew I was going to do well in life. I always knew I was going to have different things that I've now gone on to be able to afford and buy and enjoy and all the rest of the sort of thing. I never really knew how I was going to do it, right? And I think the real, and to use big name and Ward's expression here, but the real blessing of what we've been through and what we've learned and the experiences, life experiences that we've had that have shaped us into the people that we are, and now allows us to then go and put these people, everyone else, on this journey of what they're going to be able to go out there and achieve in their lives as well, and do it from a good place, and an actual genuine place of trying to get them to something significant rather than, it just be a business. It isn't just a business for us. You know what I mean? Like there is so much to this we want to help people succeed and accelerate with. So yeah, man, no matter where you are with this, give us a year of proper commitment towards this thing. Make 2025 your year, and I promise you what it will set the stage for the rest of the decade, for one, but for the rest of your life. It's gonna be game changing, man. It's gonna be absolutely game changing. So I love it. Man, I am so pumped.
Me too.
Obviously for this year, man, I'm so pumped for what's ahead, what we're gonna be able to help people do. Man, I hope some people are psyched up from today's episode. They go away, they do some planning, they do some real hard, brutal thinking on their own situation as well. How am I gonna move the needle to the absolute best so that I can look at myself in the mirror at the end of this year and go, you know what, man, you smashed it.
Yeah.
Or you know what, sis, you smashed it.
Yeah. I did everything that I could.
Yes.
That's your test is to do what you can and have no excuses on effort, because we're all evil. We're all level on effort. Some people might have more money. Some people might have more access, but everyone has the same amount of hours, same amount of the ability to apply themselves and effort. A country club won't get that. A private school doesn't get you there. Yeah. So, mate, let's do it. I'm 100%. Pumped up.
Man,
I'm
beautiful.
fired up.
Dude, I'm fired up as well, brother. It's the first episode to kick off 2025. I hope everyone else is out there, is fired up. If you're fired up, if you love today's poddy, please send it on to someone else you think could take some great value from this episode. And really, guys, I hope you all get tuned up, get fired up for a massive year in 2025. If you're loving the poddy, if you love what we did last year and you're super pumped for what we're going to do with the podcast this year, we've got a lot of mad shit coming up, guys. Make sure you jump on there, you leave us that 5-star review. And if you haven't hit the follow or subscribe button yet, make sure you hit the follow, hit the subscribe on your favorite listening platform. Get updated every time a new episode comes out, guys. It'll give you a little alert. Make sure you hit it for us. It shows us that you love what we're doing. You're building the audience. And remember, guys, keep sending this thing around so you keep building that circle of influence, just like Jimmy and I have been talking about this whole poddy as well. Jimmy, mate, thank you for joining me in the studio once again. Listeners, thanks for having me in your earpods, or in your bloody car, wherever you've been listening to us. And until next week, guys, get ready for a massive 2025. It's another Scouting Australia podcast.